Hello, everybody, and welcome to the MRS Fall Meeting 2020, especially to this MRS Wellness Symposium that we have prepared for you. I am so honored to be here today as your moderator on topic number two, the International Academic Experience Relocation, Isolation, and Adapting to Change. As you might know, this event is part of one of three topics of navigating, surviving, and thriving in the challenging landscape of academia. I invite you to check the video from yesterday's session number one, Coping with COVID-19 in Academia, Strategies to Cope with Pandemic and Create Support Structures with Dr. Flores. I also suggest you to do not miss the final session number three on December 3rd, Mental Health and Creating Community Culture Change in STEM with Dr. Wendy Ingram. My name is Araceli Hernandez Granados from the Instituto de Ciencias Físicas, UNAM, Mexico, and I'm currently doing my postdoc in plasma treatments for titanium dioxide layers applied for solar cells of third generation. And my main motivation for working on this topic as organizer is because I had experience in the past being rejected and I didn't know how to handle failure and I feel isolated. For this reason and many other more, me and the organizers, we share something in common. And we came with the idea with this topic and we propose and facilitate MRS resources to bring light on such an important topic. On this part of the session, we have prepared the participation of four panelists. As well, they will be addressing their experiences when they were graduate students and how challenging was academia for them. And also, we will listen on how to advocate for international students as well. In order to begin, let me explain you briefly the way this webinar will carry on. We have prepared two Q&A sections. The first section will consist of asking 4 to 5 questions that we have narrowed from our surveys in the previous days. And the second part we will be taking questions from the audience. So please feel free to submit your questions along the way of this webinar. There are 4 ways to do so. I will explain you briefly the way to do those. First one, you can submit your questions in the chat box of Zoom, and Zimi, one of our organizers, she will be reading those for us. This option will be visible for everyone. Second one, you can raise your hand on Zoom, and I will be unmuting your microphone, and everyone can listen to you. Third one, you can also write your questions on the chat box of Audible, and Eddie will help us to read those questions. And this option is also visible for everyone. And the last one, and the one I prefer is like you can actually submit your questions on Audible too, but instead of that, you can do it at the poll section. And this is the advantage of this option. It's like no one will see your name on it and it's completely anonymously. So now moving on from the instructions, let me tell you I'm so excited to introduce our incredible panelists for this event. I will be starting the presentations in alphabetic order of their names. I will start with Professor Abdoulaye Digire. He is an assistant professor in the Department of Chemical Engineering at Texas A&M University. And prior to join Texas A&M, Professor Digire was a postdoctoral research in chemistry and nanoscience center at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. He received his PhD in chemical engineering from the University of Michigan. And Dr. Digire's research focuses on understanding the structure, function, relationships, controlling, electrocatalytic, and photovoltaic behavior of TD, carbide trimethane for applications in energy storage and conversion. Thank you, Abdul, for being here. I am so honored to have you here. Your research is really interesting for me, and I have seen from my LinkedIn feed you have been very active participating in webinars, but also advocating for underrepresented students. So my first question is, what are the challenges that you have faced at work, home during this quarantine, and how have you overcome those? And my second question is also like, do you have any information you would like to share on fellowship programs and for underrepresented minority scholars?
Thank you very much, Hariseli, for the kind introduction. And I would like to thank everyone who have worked immensely on putting this together. So Rachel, Pamela, and everyone else who was involved in organizing this. So first of all, I want to remind everyone to uh, follow the guidelines to protect yourself and your loved ones during this pandemic. So it brought some challenges that I have faced many of those challenges myself. So when it started, actually, I remember I think so. We were forced to work from home. At the time, I was at the National Renewable Energy Lab before I transitioned to A&M. Some of the challenges that I would briefly mention here was number one, really how to stay focused, right? So that was now one of the challenges. Number two was how to be productive and efficient. So that and being focused goes along with each other. But number three was really how to make sure that you stay in touch with the community, right? So you go to work, you see everyone, you bump into people in the hallway, etc., and you have these really fruitful, rich scientific conversation that guide you toward your research. Now, how do you make sure you maintain that healthy scientific relationship and communication? Number four was really knowing when to stop, right? So you go to work from one time to time, and then you come home. For many of us, that's not really the time to stop, but at least there will be a time to stop where you will have to spend time with family. So working from home, really knowing how to do that was challenging. So here are some of the things that I did that helped me, and hopefully this will help some of you right now, or have helped some of you already. But having a proper workstation help, right? So this idea of, oh, I'm gonna work from home, I'm just gonna work, in the couch or from my bed, etc. That did not work. I think waking up in the morning and going to a workstation and sitting down, having your coffee, just like you would in your office if you were to go to work and start working, I think that helped greatly, just like Arisela is doing right now. So the second thing was really having milestone objectives, and we have this tendency of, oh, I'm working from home so I can take some time off, and there's a lot of distractions. So I think making sure that, okay, all right, today these are things that I'm going to accomplish, these are things that I'm going to do, I think helped a lot. So, and maintaining a proper work life balance, I think that was the key. So being able to do that. The second question has to do with the opportunity for both international students and underrepresented minority students in academia. So I'm going to talk about first international students. I am, well, I was an international student myself, coming from West Africa. One thing that helped me greatly, and that is, if I have to pinpoint one thing that helped me and made me where I am, or helped me achieve what I have achieved so far, is this ability to uh, to convert from outstate tuition fee to in-state tuition fee. What do I mean by that? So for international students, those of you who are international students who are listening right now, the in-state, the outstate tuitions that we have to pay, international students have to pay, is much more than the in-state tuition. To give you an example, right? So Texas A&M, so in-state tuition is about 12K and some changes, but the outstate tuition is nearly 38K. So that's more than three times higher. Now, what the scholarship that I was able to get, and that I encourage every other international undergraduate student to really look into that. I know this is available in the state of Texas. Many institutions do that. In fact, Texas A&M does that, is it's a really small amount. It doesn't have to be big. So with $500, if you have a scholarship of $500, because of that, that can change your studies from outstate fee to in-state fee. Now we're talking about a big difference here. So a challenge faced by international students is the ability to pay tuitions and not having opportunity for scholarships and etc. that and domestic students have. So and also paying the outstate fee. So these opportunity will allow you to become resident, to pay institution. That way, you don't have to work on 3, 4 jobs to pay your school and at the same time making sure that you are doing great in your studies. So this is a way to really do that. So I encourage everyone to look into that. And if you have questions, you can email me and etc. So the second thing is underrepresented and minority students. I'm going to talk about 2 levels, undergraduate level and graduate level. But particularly, I would like to focus on the graduate level. Why? The reason why I would like to focus on the graduate level is because the number of underrepresented minority students in academia in the graduate level is very low. Now, why is that? Well, the reason is when you think about a lot of HBCUs or even undergraduate-based institutions where they don't have research-based program, they don't have PhD programs. So which means that the students are not really in their graduate training level are not exposed to research. So they don't know research. Because of that, by the time they finish their undergraduate training, they have already made up their mind that they're just gonna go work in industry. So what we need to do is really how can we encourage those undergraduate students from underrepresented minority institutions, HBUs institutions, to participate in research, in cutting-edge research, right, during summer. So those are some of the things that we really need to focus on, and there are a lot of opportunities for that. So so I encourage everyone who belongs to this category to really ask questions. If you don't know, ask. If you don't ask, you will never know. There are a lot of opportunities for you. And frankly, I remember oftentimes when I go to present at some of these institutions, students don't know actually that graduate school in many disciplines is free. So ask questions and getting those answers is really important. So those are some of the things that I would like to touch on. And if Tom allows, and I would be more than happy to go in details about some of these aspects that I've already covered. But because of time concern, I'm just gonna hand over to Araceli here, and thank her again for the kind invitation. And I'll be more than happy to take any question afterward. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdul. This is impressive. This is really helping. I think this is gonna help a lot of students hearing your answers, and thank you also for. Can you also like let us know what is your email so people can also like email you in case they need it?
Absolutely. In fact, why don't I just do this? I'm just gonna put my email
Right.
in the chat. So,
Okay.
all right. So,
Thank you
yes,
so much.
of
Thank
course.
you so much to hear. And continue with the presentation of our speakers. Our second speaker is Andeep. Andeep is a 4-year graduate student in QSB at UC Merced, whose research focuses on characterizing immune response to Valley fever, a locally endemic fungal disease to the Central Valley, and joined the UAW 2A65 as a second-year graduate student to better advocate for their fellow students' rights to fair and safe working conditions and benefits, and continue to do so as a unit chair and bargaining representative for UC Merced. Thank you, Anne, for being here. Your background is outstanding, and plus, I know you work very hard on advocating for international students at UC. I also have 2 questions for you. Can you explain us briefly what is your motivation to be part of this unit chair? And the second one, what are the recommendations you can give to international students when they might have a lack of information on their rights?
Hi, good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for the kind introduction, Adesali, and thank you so much to the panelists and the organizers for having me here. It truly is an honor to be here to share this information with you and to also represent my union, UAW 2865. For a little bit of background, 2865 is the TA, tutor, grader union that represents all academic student employees within those positions within the UC system. And just as Araceli mentioned in my introduction, this really is about advocacy. I joined UAW 2865 because I've always had a very strong passion for service work and for serving my fellow colleagues. And one of the best ways that I saw to do it was to participate in labor organizing. The beauty of 2865 is that it was founded by and for academic student employees, meaning that everybody within our hierarchy of executive branches, everybody who's any sort of serving officer was democratically elected by their fellow coworkers and is either currently a graduate student or undergrad in the UC system. And the way that I like to think about it is that the advocacy work that we can do is very powerful when we collectively come together. That is, one voice is not as powerful as many voices. And UAW 2865 represents over 17,000 workers across the entire UC. So you can imagine that together we are very powerful. So in terms of what recommendations I can give to international students who might have a lack of information on their rights, I think one of the most critical things to do is just be aware of the news and what is going on in the political climate. I know that that is very, very difficult to do given how tumultuous like the last 4 years have been. And the reason why I bring this up is because when you're aware of kind of like the policies that are going on, like, you know, in the general climate, it is easier to advocate for yourself and be aware. And one of the ways to access this information in a really nice, streamlined way is to actually access your local union. I am aware that 2865, unfortunately, is restricted to the UC system, and many of you here in the audience are not in the UC system. So what I would personally recommend is to seek out your local labor union, worker union that represents you as a graduate student or you as like an academic student employee. And if such unions don't exist at your institution, I recommend reaching out to graduate student associations, graduate student advocacy groups, just because these local organizations and groups do focus around advocacy, so to say, for various students. And the reason why I think that this is so important, and just to kind of like really sell the whole unionization idea to y'all, is because when it comes to advocacy and group collective bargaining, we really can do beautiful and amazing things together. Many of you might be aware of the fact that this past summer, the Trump administration attempted to essentially remove international students' visas if they weren't actually actively physically within the US. UAW 2865 launched a very powerful campaign against the Trump administration, doing local organizing, calling our local politicians and asking them to advocate in Washington on international students' behalves. We also do a lot of advocacy work in terms of NSRT, which the previous speaker, thank you so much, Professor, for bringing that up actually. NSRT is actually one of those hot topics that we also advocate for, because we know that our international student colleagues bear very unfair burden in terms of the financial weight of being an international student as well. So one of the things that we do within 2865 is constantly having advocacy meetings where we tell administrators to, like, you know, lessen the NSRT, to advocate on our international students, colleagues' behalf, and et cetera. And I guess, like, you know, as just a final talking point, if you ever feel lost and if you ever feel like you don't know where to go, again, going to your fellow student union is a really great place to be, because we are by and for graduate students and undergrads, meaning you're not talking to, like, you know, another administrator, for example. You're not talking to somebody who's part of the university or part of the system. You're talking to a fellow graduate student, undergrad, who might also have gone through what you've gone through and can understand where you're coming from. And so, just to wrap this up, in terms of any particular questions that you might have, I'm more than happy to answer them during the Q&A session. And yeah, feel free to put it in the chat or send me a message. Thank you so much, Adesali.
Thank you so much, Anne, for such an incredible work you have been doing. As you were saying, this program is only applied for California, but I know they can also like check in their local stations like where to find this information, which is so important for all the international students. Sharing with our presentation. Give me just 1 second. Our third speaker is Alondra Mosa Diaz, but she couldn't make it due to an emergency at work. But she will be participating with some videos that she was kindly sending to us. But I will introducing her. Alondra, she is a scientist passionate about the comprehension of human behavior and connection. She has a diploma in cognitive science, a PhD, and a master's degree in behavior and connection. She studies her PhD and a master at the University of Morelos, Mexico. Currently, she's working as a postdoctoral fellow in the Corrosion and Advanced Material Laboratory in the Department of Chemical Engineering and Applied Chemistry at Toronto. By the end of this year, she will be working as a full management engineer specialist at Canadian Nuclear Laboratories. Thank you, Alondra, for being here. Dear Alondra, for me, it's really impressive how have you worked on different topics from one side corrosion and advanced materials and from the other side finding answers on such a complex topic, the behavior of ourselves. And related to this topic, my questions are um, what is your opinion on the imposter syndrome, and how has this syndrome affect you at any level or any point of your life?
First of all, I would like to thank to all the organizers. Thank you, Araceli, for putting all this together. Thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity to be with you. I think most people experience moments that are faced with doubt, and that's completely normal. The important part is not let that doubt control your actions. It has affected me, but also it has taught me to learn to value constructive criticism, understanding when I don't ask for help, I'm actually slowing down my team. Also, the syndrome has taught me to remember that the more I practice as a skill, the better I will get at it. And for example, sharing your feelings with trust friends or mentors also help when you understand like everyone has experienced those thoughts.
And lastly, but not less important, let me welcome Divya Mukapati. Divya studied computer science at the International Institute of Information and Technology at India. Soon after, she got her master's degree in computer science from Arizona State University. And during her time as a student, she did an internship as an Amazon as a software engineer. And now she works as a machine learning engineer at Facebook. Let me double check if Divya is here. Divya, are you in the session? I cannot see your name.
Yeah, I'm here now.
Oh, thank you. Awesome. You can make it. I'm so happy to have you here. I had the opportunity and honor to see your work at Facebook, and it's remarkable. I also know you have been super busy working on marketplace at Facebook. And my questions for you are, did you give time for yourself during this period of craziness work? And if you have done it, what are the things that you have done in order to feel better, happier, or healthy?
Yeah, thanks, Shelly, for the introduction and having me here. This is a really good question. So, yeah, finding time for oneself is a challenge that we all face, no matter what phase we are in. Like as a grad school student or in undergrad, like or or even when I'm working for the past 4 years. So we always ask ourselves, like when we get these extra 15 minutes, can I finish this one more task, or can I finish this one more chore? But instead, like I think we all should first realize like taking care of ourselves is a priority, especially like during this pandemic. So instead of telling myself, hey, I'll close on this one more task, why not say, hey, I'll water my plants in these 15 minutes. like or just go, why not just go for a walk in my patio, or just in the house. Like there are several ways in which like you can take care of yourself, and the first thing is like telling yourself, hey, I am my priority and my self care is very important. So yeah, there are like several things that I have tried in the past few years. So I have done like lot of art, like reading books, like trying some new instrument. I tried like gardening, cooking, running, like whatnot. So also like sometimes like you can do little things, like just listen to a good music. All you have to do is just find an app, just play that song, that's it. Like it's a really good way to detox. And like for any new hobby that you want to pursue, like there are lots of resources available online. So yeah, and I think this is like something that would apply like anytime, not just during this pandemic, but like especially during this pandemic. Yes, like we all are more stressed in general about the situation, but I think it becomes even more important for us to use the time, the extra time that we get from the commute. Like we don't have to commute to work now, like that time could be used like to take care of ourselves. So yeah, but I think it is also really important that we define boundaries between what is my work time versus what is me time. So having like these clear boundaries, and planning ahead and communicating well to people, these are some things that really helped me over the past few years, and especially during this pandemic.
Thank you, Divya. I think you're so right about it. In my case, honestly, I don't know how to set up those boundaries. I always thinking, oh, I should complete this. It's gonna take me just 10 minutes. I'm eating, so I can do this. I can be more productive. But at the end of the day, I feel so exhausted as well, and I don't give myself too much time for me. And I have been trying to improve that during this pandemic. Is, as you were saying, like before we were able to be home at certain hour, and then you will be just resting. But this time is like, and also Abdul was saying that like setting up your station for work, it's very important, but also the time for you, and also using those extra hours, like the ones that we were using to move to one place to another, it's really helpful. So thank you so much for this advice.
Yeah,
And
one thing I want to add there is like, journaling is something like, just like how we say, hey, these are the tasks that I'm going to complete at work. Like, telling myself this is the self care that I'm going to do is something that could help people. Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
thank you so much. I can see your surroundings from the behind on your wall. I know you're an artist. So, well, once again, I want to thank our panelists for being here. I am so honored to have such a diverse panel. I think from here we can cover experiences from being a master, a PhD, a postdoctoral student, a professor, advocating for international students, and also working in the private sector as well. And as I was saying earlier, I will be starting this webinar with our Q&A section that we have prepared. That's Q&A section 1. And this is questions that we have prepared from the past, from the surveys we did. And well, so before to ask my first question to our panelists, I would like to remind to our speakers, please feel free just to unmute your microphone and respond directly. We can take multiple answers from all of you from one single question. At the end of your participation, I will be displaying Alondra's answer in a video. So for starting this Q&A section number 1, my first question is, did you face challenges challenges in voicing your needs, opinions to either your advisor, your colleagues in terms of research or work-life balance? And if you did, what were those challenges?
I can start maybe.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Yeah, so this has been a really challenging part for me, especially like when I moved to a new country, like understanding the culture, how do you adapt to this culture and work. So, and like I also have had like really good managers and mentors who have helped me come across this. I think voicing your opinion is always very important. Only when you communicate clearly you get more help, like say whether you want to drive your career growth. Only when you tell your manager, he knows, like, or he or she knows what you want, and they would, that is when like they would be able to help you. Or let's say even in grad school, let's say when I want to pursue this area, so like, you know, talking to different PhD students and, you know, communicating that to the professor, and like all my professors also have been like very supportive and encouraging in this uh, perspective. So yeah, that is something that have helped me to. Yeah.
Thank you, Divya.
Yeah.
Let's see if Abdul or Anne want to also participate on this question. Okay, okay, I have you there, Anne. Thank you.
Yeah. So just to be like very upfront, I myself am not an international student, so I do speak from a very limited perspective. I am, however, a queer immigrant scientist of color. So I believe that perhaps some of the experiences might be parallel, if not similar. In terms of voicing opinion and needs freely to my advisor and my peers, to be very blunt, I do believe that a lot of higher education institutions wish to be very open and very liberal and very accepting. However, you still do face microaggressions, and you do still face a lot of ignorant comments. And I always do try to kind of like take it with a grain of salt. And I try to take it from like, you know what, maybe this person said it because they're just not aware and they're not being purposely malicious. It is, however, extremely draining if you have to constantly explain yourself, explaining where you come from. So one of the microaggressions I constantly face is when I tell people I'm an immigrant, they always tell me, oh, but your English is so good. And, you know, that is supposed to be a compliment, but, you know, it it kind of devalues the kind of like perception of who you are in terms of your identity, because you don't fit that person's mold of what you're supposed to be, right? So in terms of how I feel freely and like the work-life balance in my research and etc., I'm very, very thankful that I have a very accepting PI and I work in a very diverse lab. Two of my lab members are openly queer, such as myself, so it helps to create this very inclusive environment. My lab is predominantly first-generation college students, and 3 of us are immigrants, so we actually just can relate and share with each other. So in terms of the environment, to be honest, we kind of had to create it in a sense, so to say. And so I think finding that community within higher education is very important, because it allows you to kind of like share these experiences with fellow graduate students who know your background and know where you're coming from. But also it creates a stronger sense of camaraderie that allows you to kind of like shelter and weather kind of like the challenges of higher education and research as a whole. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Yeah, it does. Thank you so much, Anne. Okay, thank you, Abdul.
Yeah, sure. If I may add just a couple of things to what has been said already. These were some great comments, points that they both touch on. A couple of things that I will add is particularly for international students is to have an open communication. So with your advisor, okay? So knowing your expectations, knowing your rights, knowing setting boundaries, and be able to communicate that with your advisor is super important. So for many international students, they tend to be very shy, and talking to your advisor seems to be to them like a big deal, and but in reality it really is not. So having that open conversation in the beginning and knowing what you need to do and knowing what he or she expects from you. And I think that's critical in moving forward in terms of whether you need to have a voice in saying something or changing the direction of your research. But in everything that will come after, if you can have that established from the get-go, that is the key.
Awesome. I think you're so certain, right? You know, in order to also be success in our research, we also have to be very clear or what we are looking for and what is not going on the right direction we want. So now I will be sharing Londra's answer for this question as well. Did what were those challenges?
I did, but I truly understood that my main challenge was, first of all, believing in myself and trusting my guts, trusting that my findings, my research findings, even though they weren't aligned with my supervisor's theory or his vision of the project, truly saying what I think, even though he has more experience, we are in front doing research. We truly have all the tools. We know what we have changed or not. So I think the first, it has to be with being confident, with believing that what you are doing, it's based on your experience. What you are saying is based on observations, and that's a way to find new ways to create new science. So my main challenge always has been believing in myself.
Thanks to Alondra for doing this work for us and sending the videos and her answers. We have also the honor to have another participant, Eva Hammer. Eva, do you have any thoughts or comments about this question as well?
Mute. Thanks a lot for having me here. Also, like involved in this MRS event, I would like to really give like a big shout out to all of the student organizers. You're doing an amazing job. So I'm really happy to see this. And maybe I can comment a bit on this topic from a slightly different perspective. So I have been an international undergraduate student coming from Germany, studying in France. Then I was an international postdoc in Japan. Then I was an international postdoc in Canada. And now I am an assistant professor in Canada. So I experienced it as a kind of at different stages of my studies. And I think I was extremely lucky that my first experience as an international student was actually not at all full of challenges, but it was in a very easy way. And this was because I picked a program that was organized by my home university in Germany. So it was a European engineering school in France that hosted 50% of the students were French. The other half was like students from partner universities in Germany, in Sweden, in Spain, and also some from Russia and some from Vietnam even. So, but because it was a European school, there was so much taken care of all the foreigners. And also like the home students, the French, they knew that in 2 years they would go to one of those partner universities. So they really were up to making friends with the foreigners because they knew already, we will need you once we are the foreigners. So, and I think this was a very easy introduction into getting this international experience, which then really got me on the hook. And once I was back in Germany, the first thing I wanted to do was to leave again to continue this journey. And yeah, of course, there are challenges. You feel lost in the pandemic, even more so. I cannot travel home, so I'm stuck here. Being in academia, it's a busy life, as we have heard before. But on the other hand side, it's not just a job. You do it because you have a passion for it. And then again, it's important to find your balance. And I had also the privilege when being, for instance, a postdoc in Japan, even though it was a huge challenge with language. So I totally understand all of my students that I have now that are struggling with language. But I've always found help. So if you ask for it, people usually are open to it. So I think this is a big message. So don't get desperate. Try to find your peers that are in the same boat, and try to enjoy. And if you see some cultural challenges, which is for 100% sure you will face, it helped me not to get angry over it, because as a guest in another country, you have to accept it. It was my choice to go there. Rather see it as a curiosity and some cultural input and to explore it. I think this really infected me with this almost like a virus, so to say, and like to keep going and try out different countries. And overall, despite of the challenges, yes, absolutely. I can only recommend this to everyone. And earlier we spoke about the need for scholarships and tuition fees. So I know this is MRS, so there's maybe a lot of people from the US in the audience, but keep in mind there are other countries in the world, and many of them, they actually don't ask you for tuition fee at all. So you get an awesome education for free. And mainly, for instance, this European school, it's like they are accepting also students from the US. If you want, I can share a link later on. So it gives you like this community that makes it easier to do this experience and to train on it to be ready then for maybe a more serious step.
Thank you, Eva, for such an amazing thought. I think you're right. Like this webinar is also created in a way to show support, but also show opportunities in how we have overcoming those. Thank you so much for your incredible participation. And well, moving to the question number 2 that we have prepared. Do you feel cultural or language barriers had affect your ability to navigate the academic system, and have these barriers created social isolation, and how did you overcome those? I think we have been talking about a little bit on this topic, but we can just like say briefly thoughts or comments on this, because this is one of our main challenges, like all of us we face when we gotta speak, in this case English. It's also for me challenging being here and being a moderator. So I don't know who wants to go first.
All right, I can go first. I think this is very important, and we have touched on this a little bit already. But what I would like to say here is that it is super important. So a lot of time, so there are things that culturally that those of us from overseas don't understand. And if we don't understand how do, for example, Americans behave, then we will not be able to work with them effectively. So in fact, I myself have faced a lot of challenges culturally in grad school, in the sense that I came from a different background, so I was not able to understand why they were doing some of the things they were doing. But what helped me, I think, will be beneficial for the audience is how to deal with this. So integration, that's what I would suggest, right? So for example, don't isolate yourself in your little corner and thinking that, oh, this is their thing and I'm not gonna go to the bar with them, or I just don't understand their behavior, so I'm just gonna focus on the work. No, on the contrary, actually, you should participate in those events, right? So try to understand how are things in America, right? So, and invite them over, right? Share food with them, and they will invite you over. They will share food, so you will see how they think, how they behave, and what are some of those cultural barriers that are there, that exist, that, and how you can overcome that. Then next time when something happens, oh, okay, this is why it happened, and it will also help you to work more productively and form a better team, and this would be beneficial throughout your career.
Thank you so much, Abdul, for your answer. Let's see if Divya wants to comment something about this. And do you want to comment something about this question? I think you did before, but if you want to share something briefly. Okay, I will wait for their answers, but
Yeah.
meanwhile, oh, sorry, Go ahead. Yes, Divya, thank you.
Yeah, I think yeah, it is really important that like it's not just US. Like when you move to any new place, new country, it can be a new city. Understanding the culture there, and how things work, and see like how you can fit in. It is really important, like especially when I first moved here, like culturally it was very different in terms of even how you spend your time. Like I was like away from my family, I would miss my family and like friends back in India. And the way we spend like time here is very different. So even like slowly as I went through my grad school, I started learning like on different ways how I can engage myself here. So there are like lot of meetup groups. So you can find a meetup group for pretty much everything that you are interested in, like finding your passions, finding the right group for you, like who are interested in similar things, and engaging with them. Like that is something that helped me a lot when I moved here. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Divya.
Yeah.
And also responded just like Dr. Dire said it absolutely beautiful, and I agree with that. I will share my screen so we can listen Alondra's answer on this topic.
Having the opportunity to learn a new language and a new culture has had its pros and cons. Learning a new language has allowed me to get to know and explore myself from a new perspective, completely new perspective. It has helped me to recognize some thought patterns that are recurrent when I'm talking in my mother tongue, for example. On the other hand, when I shift to English, I certainly become more rational and tend to make more time to take decisions. In other words, I'm more emotional when I'm using my mother tongue, for example. I'm more rational when I'm speaking a second language. I also have learned to connect with people in a different way. I have noticed that the way of my conversations, the way I express myself in my mother tongue, certainly I have a more complete and vast vocabulary. For example, I can make more and better jokes while I'm speaking my mother tongue. While I'm speaking a second language, I have perceived that my conversations are more thoughtful, direct, and specific. I believe I'm a better listener when I'm speaking a second language. And this could be because I'm still learning English. I have also noticed being more attentive and intentional while listening to the other person in English. But also I have complications to have a chit chat or simple conversations I'm not able to engage. So I think learning another language and culture, as I say, it has pros and cons, and it depends from what position you want to observe and interpret each circumstances. And actually, that will give you the tool to succeed in any moment in your life.
I couldn't be agree more with Alondra about this. I also feel better when I speak my native language, which is Spanish. And also, I decided as a personal decision to not study any more English, because I have been studying English since I was, I don't know, like 12 years old or before. So it's been a lot of time spending time in classes. So this might be sounding kind of weird because it's supposed to like all of us should we improve our skills every day. And I do try. That's why I also being part of this moderator participation. But I decided also to study a new language, which is Italian. And I know I also get some questions like, why do you do that? When are you gonna use that? But I wanted to learn the culture and the way to do it. So it's like also learning the language. And one of my main goals for me as a spiritual thing is going to Italy and be able to speak and be there and and engage with the people there is one of my main goals. And well, that is an personal impression of this. Let's see if Eva wants to share something about this topic too. She did before earlier, but let's see, she has a lot of experience traveling in different places.
I really love your comment about like you learn now Italian in order to go and know the culture and experience it. This was actually my rationale why I made an attempt to learn Japanese while I was a postdoc there, even though honestly I was a terrible student. So I did my homework 5 minutes before class, but still, at least in the end, I was like able to at least ask for where's the train station and where can I buy food, or just saying like, I'm not able to read, can you please help me? I think it's really important to get into some foreign languages. And sometimes you may even think about, oh, yeah, why do you study Italian? Nobody needs it. It was the same. When I was a teenager, everyone was totally into English. I was like, who cares about French? But I did this French exchange program, and in the end, it turned out to be a big favor, because when I interviewed for the position at the University of Ottawa, all the undergraduate program is bilingual. So they're always looking for people that can teach in both languages, English and French. And I believe it was quite an advantage that I actually was able to speak French, and they could hire me because I can contribute to the teaching in French. So never underestimate foreign languages. They can be very useful. But it's a lifelong learning. I stopped taking English classes a long time ago. It's now learning by doing, but I think we always keep having a little disadvantage. This is totally fine because it was my choice to go to a country that is not my mother tongue. But for instance, when I read proposals or I hear interviews with native English speakers, and I hear words that sound so awesome, and I'm always thinking like, how can you know all these words? It just makes it so more round and polished. I would never be able to do. And if it comes to a job interview or you want to sell your science, then yeah, definitely it puts people that have this language skill in a much better position. So yes, it can be a challenge, but it can also be a lot of fun to live in a And fun fact aside, which I would really want to believe in, I heard that, or I read a study saying like, if you are living in a different language that is not your mother tongue, the likelihood of getting Alzheimer's is smaller.
Okay, thank you so much, Eva, for your impressions on this. I will move on question number 3, and the question is: did either the institution or peers provide insights related to employment, housing, healthcare, mental health care, or any other field? If they provide that information, in what platform they were given it? Professional development, workshops, orientation, community organization, or any other? Let's see who wants to participate on this. Okay, Anne, thank you.
Yeah. Speaking a little bit more broadly and more from the union representative side, and I say this, I say this with all the love in my heart, and I put it very delicately. I think that institutions of higher education and universities have to play a very fine balancing act between what is good for them as a university and what is good for them for their students. And the reason why I bring this up is because the question touches upon, like, you know, what organizations or professional kind of groups really help with that. And from a union standpoint, I think that one of the most powerful things that you can do is to reach out to your fellow students to participate in the student communities that exist here. And I bring this up because right in the summer, right as a lot of the ICE proclamations and the Department of Homeland Security executive orders were going out to restrict international student visas, the UC, and I can only speak for the UC as a graduate student in the system, but the UC made a very difficult decision to actually say that they would not give TA appointments to students who were stuck internationally abroad. And so in that particular situation, that is where the power of the union and collective bargaining and collective organizing comes in, because we were able to actually get the UC to reverse on their position by banding together, collecting signatures of support. And on a more broader political kind of sphere, that's kind of like what impacts you on a personal level as a graduate student is being made like decision-wise very higher up in the hierarchy. This is where I think that kind of like community collective action is so important. And I think the beauty of this is that you yourself as a graduate student doesn't need to be actively involved, because there are advocates such as myself and other fellows at your campus who are already probably doing this kind of work that are more than happy to like reach out and participate for you on your behalf. So in terms of kind of like the proper introduction of these topics and whatnot, I do think that universities and higher education institutions try their best to kind of like accommodate all these different resources. But I think the true kind of like, really great thing about like higher education for me is watching my colleagues and my fellow graduate students and my fellow workers come together to advocate on each other's behalf and to provide a community and resources for each other.
Thank you so much, and such an incredible work you have done. I will take the answer from Divya because she has to leave after this. She has some work to do at Facebook, which is so important. And we thank before you leave your participation on this. But I know you can also answer this question for us. Thank you so much, Divya.
Yeah, sure. So I think I can answer more from like based on how my experience was when I moved here. So yeah, in general, like so there are many resources that are available to us. Like we also have international student service, like at Arizona State University, that would provide us with these resources. And like there were always these career advisors like whom we could actually schedule appointments where they would guide us with anything on what kind of courses we want to pick, if there is any issue with the credits or CPT, OPT, like any kind of questions we had, we could always schedule appointments and reach out to them. And even like for health, housing, like mental health, there are several resources in the university. And I think mental health is something that is not very well talking about, but that is something that could affect many students, like especially when they come to new country, they have to adapt to the culture, they are away from the family. I think these are some things that like even like your friends and like your community that could help, and like we could use like our community for some of these challenges. And yeah, also like for career development, like say even when I'm interviewing, like say as a new grad, like maybe when I did not have a lot of industry experience, like I'm a bit nervous for my interviews. So like when I schedule like just an appointment with career services, like they would just do like some mock interviews for me and help with them. And like also like from our peer group, like we all used to work collectively together for these things. That is also something that helped me.
Thank you so much. Thank
Yeah.
you so much, Divya. I will continue with the question. And thank you so much. Do you want to add something on this? Your final thoughts, because I know you gotta leave.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. I think you're all like this is a really great initiative. I wish like I have attended something like this when I was a grad student. uh yeah.
Thank you so much. I know you were so excited to help us, and thank you for all the time you share with us. Thank you so much, Divya.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, my next question I will decide it because we also have the question from the audience, and it will be it will be more this next question. It will be especially for Ant, Abdul, and Eva. And from your experience, how can students or faculties can help international students, and what can unions or school do to provide a safe place? Any thoughts on this?
I can go.
Yeah, sure. And go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah,
You
of
are
course.
the expertise on this topic. Thank you so much.
Thanks. I really appreciate it. Yeah. So I guess like just to go back to like the whole purpose of a union, right, is to collectively kind of like organize for better working conditions and like safer working conditions. And this is a very broad definition because this could include like, better benefits such as better health insurance or childcare benefits, for example, all the way to safer working environments. And I think that especially with COVID-19, it's really proven how crucial student-led organizations and student-led labor movements are. Because as some of you might know and have seen in the news, not only are there visa travel restrictions because of the pandemic, but there's also like, now safety issues. I think it goes without saying that like international students are such a crucial and important part of higher education throughout the entire world, because it is through the cultural exchange that we better ourselves as societies and better ourselves as people. However, like, there are instances such as the visa restrictions that we've been seeing in the US, for example, that really highlight how push comes to shove sometimes international students aren't as valued as they should be, to put it very bluntly. And so in terms of creating safer working environments, there's the kind of like local level grassroots organizing where you communicate to your PI, you communicate to your fellow coworkers, you kind of like, collectively come together to understand what are the mass issues or common issues throughout like a single department or a single program, and communicate these issues to administrators in order to fix them. And if that doesn't work, then there's that higher level of organizing where, statewide petitions. Speaking for UAW 2865, the idea of 17,000, workers across all of California coming together to basically say and tell the UC as a whole that, hey, every single campus is worried about COVID safety, for example, PPE availability. That in of itself is a very powerful way to move and change the working environment that you are in. And I think just to kind of like really emphasize this, unions are powerful because we have the power to push for a contractually enforced language, meaning that whatever we require or request from the university, we have the power to negotiate it into written contract, which is then kind of like protected in the sense that we can go back to it as workers and as graduate students and undergrads to refer to basically protect our rights. And our rights at the end of the day is like one of the things that we shouldn't be scared to exercise. Everybody should be encouraged to know their rights and exercise their rights. And so just to wrap up this question, because I think I'm going to ramble about this for ages, but I think that one of the beauties of student-led organizations is that, again, it's coming from the students. And so it's coming from the folks who are being impacted the most, and it's being supported and upheld by their fellow colleagues and peers. And I think in of itself, something that is student-led is very powerful. So thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Let's move to Abdul if he wants to comment about this question.
Right. I think Anne said it beautifully. What I would just add to what she said is, this is really reiterating what she said already, is the fact that we need international students. If you look at the percentage of international students in many institutions in the US, is much higher than that of the domestic student that we get in graduate school. So we cannot operate without international students. So therefore, really it boils down to knowing, and especially those of us who are faculty, what can we do to help international students? And international students also have to help us by letting us know what can we do to better help them, to make sure that this environment is comfortable for them so that they can really enjoy their work and etc. So it goes both ways, and this is something that will not be necessarily addressed in this platform, in this panel, but is something that we need to discuss, we need to talk about, and especially the COVID has proved that, right? Many higher education institutions right now don't have graduate students because the majority of graduate students come from overseas, and now they're stuck overseas. They cannot come, and now we have work to do. We have research to do, and we cannot do those research. We have grants that we need to, use, and we cannot use those grants. Why? Because again, it shows us how important these integrations of cultural integration is important, not just in humanity, but in every aspect of life, especially in academia. So which is why this panel is so important, and I was just honored to participate in it.
Oh, thank you, Abdul. This is so important what you're saying. We as a professor, we also think it's important to share these connections with people from other places, and especially international students. And yeah, thank you so much for this impressive thoughts.
Of
Let's
course.
see if Thank you. Let's see if Eva wants to add something because she also has a lot of experience working as a professor, full-time professor.
Yeah, so maybe it was really important what Ann said about like the legal parts, and maybe it is a bit related to what I would recommend international students. Really seek out to, if there are international student organizations on your campus, they might be for fun because it's a dance group or it's a movie group or it is whatever, or it can be even in the city. So this is how I made a lot of friends when I was in Japan, because within the institute, it was limited. I was more or less the only foreigner except from another postdoc. And the English level was really like non-existing for the students, which was then really tough. But in a big city like Tokyo, you always find other foreigners, and this is also like a driving force. We find each other and you find mutual interest. And as you build those up, you also learn more about from other students' experiences. What are your rights? Where can you seek help? What is the tips? How did other people figure out different things that can make your life like unnecessarily difficult? And sometimes it's small things like, I'm a foreign student and I have to set up a bank account and no bank wants to give me a credit card. What do I do? So then you really need those relations to other foreign students. And if I can give one advice, it's really important to find your peers. And as Abdul said, most of the universities have indeed so many international students. We totally rely on them. So we need them. So this is also, it's the good news for international students. So don't be shy to try. And but also it's true, if you don't speak up and you don't tell either the admin or you don't tell your supervisor what your needs are, we cannot help.
Right. Thank you, Eva. What you're saying is so important. I can also like address that to myself because when I was studying for a brief time in Arizona State, I also experienced that. I felt isolated. But now that you're saying we should look out for places to be part of it, I didn't do that. I was always thinking should continue isolated and not be part of something. I don't know. It was a random thought that I had, like no one wanted to talk to me or something, but probably it was me, the one who also wanted to be included for some reason or for some cultural barriers that I face. Now that you're saying, it's totally understandable. Thank you so much for pointing that out. I will continue with the question, and well, this is for Divya and Alondra, but Divya had to leave, so I will be saying the question and I will play the video. Now that you work internationally, will you stay permanently, or how does that make you feel staying in a different country? Give me 1 second to share my screen.
I definitely don't know what to expect in the future. I'm a person who doesn't believe in the future. I like to have plans and goals for sure. And also, I don't believe in the past. I believe the only moment that is real is this moment. And actually, yes, I want to stay here as much as possible. I have the chance to understand myself in a different way because the culture is different, and it's still there. It's a challenge because I don't have friends, that many friends. I don't have my family here, and everything is a challenge. But I believe that's the way how we can grow and how we can improve. And definitely, if in future I have to go back to my country, I would love to share everything I have learned. But so far, I'm very happy to stay here in Canada for now.
All right. Thanks, Alondra, for such an amazing participation. And well, now we can start our question Q&A section number 2. And I want to thank all the panelists for the first round of Q&A. And well, as I was explaining earlier, the way to participate, let me share my screen again. Just give me 1 second. So I can show you how to participate on this second Q&A section number 2. And the way to do it is like 4 ways. I will give it some minutes, like we can collect some questions for the audience. And the way to do so is like you can submit your questions on the chat box, and Simi will be taking those and she will be reading those for us. The other way is to raise your hand on Zoom, and I will be unmuting your microphone so you can go directly. The third one is you can write your questions on the chat box on Parable, and it's visible for everyone. But if you want to submit your questions in a way to be anonymous, you can do it at the poll section. And I will be asking if any of our organizers, they do have any questions yet.
Yeah, there is one question in the poll section. This question is 3 parts. So
Okay.
The question is, which support systems have worked best for you? How can fellow researchers who are not international best act as allies for you? And what has not worked? And what are some common mistakes allies make that we can avoid in the future?
Thank you, Eddie. Who would like to answer this? Eva, Abdul, and
Again, yeah.
okay, sure, thank you.
This is a perfect question. And speaking as a graduate student who's not an international student, but serving in an advocacy and ally position, I think I might answer the questions backward, Eddie, and you might have to remind me what some of them are. I think the most common mistake that I see my fellow non-international students make when trying to advocate for international students is not giving the platform to international students. There's a lot of, I want to speak on behalf. And so it's the reason why I'm very careful to announce to the audience that I'm not international, therefore take my advice with a grain of salt. I think that there has to be a lot of like acknowledgement that like, you know, when you do want to help, you can't infantilize your colleagues either. There is this strange kind of like perception that like, because my international colleague doesn't know as much as me, I'm going to treat them very childishly. I'm going to try to protect them. It's very patronizing. It's very like, you know, condescending, and essentially just making assumptions that your international colleague is not as capable as you, and therefore that's why you have to protect them. It's this very toxic kind of like advocacy savior mentality that I see a lot in social justice advocacy spaces and a lot in advocacy spaces in general. So I think like the best advice that I have for non-international students is to like, you know, always take a step back, remind yourself that obviously your colleagues are just as capable as you. And like, you know, just because they're unaware of the culture or unaware of like some of the language quirks that you had the privilege of knowing because you grew up in this environment, like, you know, that doesn't make them less. And I know that's like very basic, you know, but like it just needs to be reminded sometimes. In terms of what worked and what didn't work, again, coming from the UC system, so I apologize, my advice might be like not applicable. I really, again, want to advocate and speak on behalf of student-led organizations. I think there's something so powerful about being able to connect with your community and like, you know, movements that are by and for and led by graduate students, especially the students who are being impacted and marginalized the most. And so in terms of what worked and what didn't work, it's a little bit of kind of like, you know, test phase to see where you do fit in, whether or not, like, you know, the organization does do what they advertise to do. I've certainly participated in organizations where they advertise themselves to be one way, but ended up having that very, like, you know, colonial savior mentality. And so I had to leave because that's not what I want to participate in, and that's not what I want to be a part of. And so I think that in terms of, like, you know, figuring out what to do and where to go, student-led is always great. Being aware of kind of, like, you know, the messaging and how non-international students talk about international students is a really good way to kind of, like, gauge where they're coming from. And then finally, trust your gut. Like, do you feel comfortable in this space? Do you feel respected? Do you feel loved and actually upheld and supported? So thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you so much. Let's see who wants to also add any thoughts. Eva or Abdul?
So maybe it's really true. Again, it comes always back to seek for your peers and get advice from them. This has most of the time really worked for me. And this doesn't matter at which stage, whether it was student time or whether it is now. However, I have to admit that, like, I am seeking probably most of the advice, and I'm seeing my best mentors in colleagues that, even though so they are for much longer time in Canada than I am, and I see them already like my Canadian colleagues. But so I'm seeking a lot of advice from people that also have a non-local background, because sometimes it really is like a fact that they understand better the struggle you go through. And they also understand where you may have a different point of view and where you may have a danger of falling into a pitfall. So reaching out on one hand side to more experienced or other, let's call it immigrants or people with different backgrounds, definitely is helpful. But on the other hand side, it doesn't matter what is your cultural background. So for instance, I found that at the University of Ottawa, they have a lot of offers like small workshops and info sessions for new faculty. And there it doesn't matter where the people are coming from, because then you also realize it doesn't matter whether they are an international or whether they are a local. They are as clueless as you are. They may have a little advantage because they know better local systems. They are already more accustomed to the teaching style in another country than you are if you are new to it. But otherwise, I quickly saw that they are as clueless as I am. And this is also encouraging. It helps your mental health to see that others have the same struggle. It doesn't matter where they are coming from.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, Eva. Abdul, do you want to share something related to this question?
Yeah, sure. What I will add to what has been said already, specifically to the non-international folks, is to be open-minded. And what I mean by that is what Anne has said and Eva has already said is really knowing that these people don't come from here. They come from a different background. The way we do things is different from the way they do things or they understand things. So, and be willing to teach them, right? So the question was, what can we do to help them? Be willing to teach them. Take your time, and don't say, oh, it's not my problem. I don't worry about it, right? It's not. No. Take time. Is a minute. Oh, I just saw you doing this. Actually, we don't do this here in the United States, but this is how you do it, right? So, and for international students too, you go to many institutions, they have international organization. Oh, it's international night, it's international party, but that's all international. Yes, you need that, but at the same time, you need people from here too. So for those organizational folks, invite people from here and ask them questions, right? So that you can learn what things are, done in the US and other, places as well. So it's super important because we go out there, we grab these, students from overseas, they come over here and they're on their own, right? Okay, go ahead, study. All right, do great, good luck. Yes, but how are they gonna survive? So, and I think, students who are not international students, who are from here, maybe if they can actually take a big part of this and understand that, oh, I could be in the same position as these folks, right? I could have been the one studying in France or Germany. now what can I do to help them while they're here? So I can take my time to teach them some of the things that they don't know, invite them over Thanksgiving. Right? This is how we do Thanksgiving. This is why we have Thanksgiving, and etc. So those are some of the things that I think we need to do to better work together and have a fruitful community.
Can I add one comment?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Eva.
It's so true, and it is a shout out to all local students. If you have visiting or foreign students that decide to do their full study, be open to them. So I was super lucky when I went for the very first time as an intern to Japan. One of the students who came together with the professor to pick me up from the airport so that I would not get lost, he told me, it's like, my name is Shun and I love traveling, and tell me what you want to see of Japan in the next 2 months. I show you everything. So this is the best thing that ever happened. And right, this is how you learn about the new culture. He was curious in learning how we are doing it in Europe. And he showed me and explained to me how to go to a Japanese bars and how to go to drink tea and the do's and the don'ts. So ultra important.
Oh, that is so lovely. I know, like having someone who is helping you to overcome those probably problems, like you can actually solve it. It's so amazing because our memories can be better, right? When we are having someone next to us, showing us around and explaining us also and learning. That's why we are also deciding to go to those places. And yeah, you're right. Like we can also do that if we are locals. Try to be kind because that is so important. Not to someone. Probably yes. If someone is from another country, it's like it's so important. But also if they are locals, like it's lovely. We can show some compassion and kindness all the time. So thank you so much. So I think we have another question. Let's see if we have um uh on the pop box or in the chat. Let's see if Julia, Eddie, or Simi, they have collect some questions.
Yeah, there's another question in the chat section of Pathable. This question asks, what are the tips to engage with people and explore the culture in a new country?
Awesome. Who wants to go first? Seems like Eva wants to answer this.
For me, it worked on different levels. To be honest, there was always like a small seed that was given to me, and I took that opportunity to make something out of it. So to really get engaged and find new friends, it is always a little bit of a matter of luck to find these people. For instance, in Japan, it was my postdoc supervisor who had a friend, a Japanese lady, who he knew was doing her studies in Germany some time back. And so he introduced us because he knew she wanted to speak German, and she became a friend of mine. And then I learned about one of her students who is a German. And this is how I got into this community to go for skiing and hiking and you name it. So this was just a tiny trigger that brought me into that community. As a postdoc in Montreal, it was because the lab and the institution is really international. And Montreal is a very heavy on university place with people from everywhere. I think there was really a unique environment with so many internationals where it was very easy to make friends because they were all like alone when they came. And actually, we are still in touch. When the pandemic started, we decided to make a WhatsApp group with like those 20 people. And so we caught up, even though now we are spread around everywhere. Nobody is left in Montreal almost. So yeah, I think sometimes you need this seed and then it's easy. But if you see a tiny opportunity, take it. So this is also important. If there's an opportunity and if someone offers you, don't say no.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. Even like thinking out of the box and not be international student. Also, if you are local, it is important for all of us to have a partner always to share some activities like going for a jog or having any exercise, which is so important during these days. I know this pandemic also has restricted us to stay home and not be able to be in touch with other people. I know, but in general, it's a great idea to find those opportunities to connect with other people as well. I don't know if Abdul wants to also share any thoughts or about this?
Yeah, I think Eva said it beautifully. What I would add to that is just treat it like your first day at school, right? So first day at school, you make friends. Some people like you, some people may not like you right away, but make friends. At the end of the day, you're gonna need them, right? So make friends, and these friends, they will become your mentors, and you can ask them, how can I get a credit card? Or how can I get a car loan, and etc. So really make friends, and be willing to share the culture, right? So if you are, for example, from a Muslim based country, your religion is Muslim, and you don't go to bars, but really in grad school, for example, that's what grad students do. They go hang out. Now you can participate in that without having to drink alcohol, but you will integrate, see, and they begin to think like, oh, he or she is one of us. We can hang out together. We understand each other. We can talk, we can laugh with each other. So that's how you really, I think, can build up a good relationship. And that's what I would advise. Just make friends. That's all.
Thank you so much, Abdul. Let's see if I wanna add something about this.
No, I think Eva and Abdul both said it perfectly. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much to everybody. I think we don't have more questions, but please don't leave yet because I have some important announcements to make for you in order to have more information about this topic. And well, unfortunately, yes, our time has expired for this webinar, but before finishing this, I want to thank the audience for staying until this point, our amazing panelists and the organizers for pulling out all this together. Thank you so much. And as I was saying, please don't leave because I still have something really important information to say. If you allow me 5 minutes, I will be finishing this. Thank you so much. And in order to close our session, I want to ask if the panelists have any final comments or thoughts that they would like to share with us. You want to go first, Anne?
Yeah, sure, totally. Again, I want to reiterate how thankful I am for being invited to speak as a panelist and for all the hard work that the organizers and moderators have done to set this up. And I'm really honored to actually be on the same panel with such really great speakers such as Eva, Abdul, and Divya, and etc. Because I'm just a graduate student, so I definitely feel really honored to be here to speak on behalf of both the union I represent and the graduate students that I serve. And I guess I just want to close this off by saying that 2020 has been a challenge. These last 4 years have been a challenge that we've all seen politically, locally, internationally. But I just really want to reiterate, one of the points that I said earlier, which is that diversity and inclusion and cultural differences is what makes us stronger and what gives us the amazing work that we do as research institutions and as institutions of higher education. So to my non-international student peers, definitely work on being allies and work on uplifting your international peers and figuring out ways that you yourself can participate in advocacy that you do, whether that be joining a union or whether that be joining local student government or even just, inviting somebody out to go to lunch, something as simple as that, and just connecting with your fellow peers. So I just want to wrap up again by saying thank you, and thank you for having me.
Thanks to you, Anne. It's such an honor for us to have you, and I know you're a great student. And we also wanted to have this participation from that side, and I know your work is amazing. Thank you for doing that. Let's see if Abdul or Eva wants to also share their final thoughts on this.
Maybe some encouraging words for everyone. So if you ever thought about going abroad, I just can say do it. If you have the slightest opportunity to get the chance to go it, do it, because I think you learn a lot about, you start learning appreciation for what is maybe better in your home country. You also start learning appreciation about what is better in your host country. And also, if you are a student, you don't need to know now where you will be in 10 years with your career. When I was an undergraduate student and you would have asked me, do you see yourself being an assistant professor in Canada? I would probably have just like laughed it off, and I never thought about it. Not even like 7 years ago, I thought about it. So sometimes it's a jump in cold water, and I understand if it can go wrong, and I was lucky it never went wrong, but I had amazing mentors that offered me opportunities to join different institutions, and I took those opportunities, and so far, fingers crossed, it turned out well. So I can only recommend to everyone to be brave and give it a try.
Thank you so much, Eva.
First of all, I would like to again thank everyone, Araceli and Rachel and Pam and Eva and Anne and everyone else who was involved in this. I greatly appreciate it. And I would like to just add to what has been already said to both international students and underrepresented minority students that there are a lot of help for you. People want to help you. You hear questions. What can allies do? What can non-international students do? What can majorities, group do? So if they can help us, help them, I think that's the best way to move forward. So expecting from people and not telling them and not being transparent in terms of what you want is really deceiving. So being able to communicate and ask questions and create friendship and mentorship and these are things that we really need to do all together to create a better future, a better world for everyone to feel comfortable to have a place in it. So don't hesitate to reach out. That's my last comment.
Thank you so much, everybody, again, for such an incredible thoughts. And you're totally right. And thank you for such an incredible participation and sharing your experience. And this is space with us and this safe space that we have created. And I'm more than sure that this kind of topics that we have brought here, they're so important, and we should talk about them more often in academia. And I really hope our audience also have found them very useful and positive in ways to be kind to ourselves and to others all the time, because we don't know what is someone going through at any part of their lives. And well, I would like you also to make few announcements before closing this session. And it's I would like you to check. I would like you to invite you to check on the file section. We have work on a PDF, which is a STEM wellness resources. And the only thing you gotta do is click here and you can download it. And we have multiple resources, books, training, and many other information that we cannot bring all this together because we have collect all this information from our speakers and from our research that we have doing to prepare this kind of topics for you. And please do not miss our last session of this series on Thursday, December 3rd, Mental Health and Creating Community Culture Change in STEM with Dr. Wendy Ingram, the CEO of Dragonfly Mental Health, and Rachel Woods as a moderator. And also, please, I would like you to scan this code with your phone camera. It's really simple to do that. And you can answer, if you help us to answer this, it's going to be anonymously. And it's a survey that we can actually have your feedback and your thoughts about this event, which is so important for us. And also, if you want to do it later, you can also click on files and you will find a link on it. And lastly, I want to thank also the organizers for working on this hard work and this event, for pulling all this together: Julia Bernard, Eddie Cardona, Simrajit Grewal, Rachel Woods, Eva Hammer, which is also a panelist in this case, and Duan Han, and Daniel Seller, and Pamela Help. And of course, our amazing audience of this morning for staying up to here in our panelists. So without you, this wouldn't be possible to do. Thank you again for participating on this, and I hope you can feel safe and have a happy morning. And thank you so much for